Welcome everybody to the February event, Female Disruptors. We are celebrating Black History Month and females in general disrupting. And today I'm really happy to be here. In case you missed it, I just interviewed, we had a little fireside chat with Chris Burnett, and we talked about the story behind Boss Beauties and why we invested in the Boss Beauties NFT. Right now I have Ingrid here, and then after this session, we have Andrea Hoffman. She's going to be talking about the connection between diversity and innovation. So all these super interesting conversations. If you're watching this live, please feel free to go ahead and put questions in the chat. I'll either try to take them as they come in, if it makes sense, or we'll wait to the end and make sure that we give everybody, make sure we give like 10 minutes at the end to ask us any questions. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ingrid Riley. And Ingrid, thank you so much for being part of the Female Disruptors February event. How are you?
I'm pretty good, and I appreciate being part of it. Everything that happens to do with women and women in tech or women entrepreneurship, I'm happy to be a part of that. So thank you for asking. It's good to be here.
Yes, thank you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? I know you're in Jamaica right now, and
Yep.
you've been in the emerging tech entrepreneur industry for you've made a stake there, and you're also embracing crypto, or I don't know how long you have been, but tell us your journey and like where you are today, and let's get started with that.
Okay, well, pretty much, thank you. Well, pretty much, I would give credit to my journey into tech and all things digital. I would credit to two things happening. One, right out of college, I joined this newspaper startup called the Jamaica Observer. And they were very keen on having us use the internet to do a bunch of different things. It actually was one of the first companies back then to actually have internet in their company office. The second thing was, prior to that, my family was one of the first people to own one of the first internet service providers in Jamaica called Jamaica Online. So being exposed early to, going into a cold room with a whole bunch of modems. Yes, I'm a Generation X. So we talk about modems in a cold room. And I think having that exposure, having, the internet at home and having the internet also at work, kind of exposed me to a whole bunch of different things. So for me, even though I started my career as an investigative reporter and columnist, I think just following my curiosity to see what this internet thing was about, just kind of led me to doing a whole bunch of different experiments. It led me to starting the first carbon internet guide, paper, and which was basically just a directory of all the various websites that we could find that were online at that time. We're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s. And that led me to, become the chief content officer at this American startup called HomeView. And that led to, my business partners and I doing things like having an interactive agency. Then we decided we're going to start our own Caribbean online ad network called Carib Clicks. Then we started our own version of a social network called Caribbean Massive, just around the same time as Facebook as well. So I just kept going and going and going, different iterations. And one of the things while we were doing our interactive agency stint, a lot of information kept coming to me. People were either asking me what people were doing in the space, or was telling me what they were doing in the space. And so my business partner at the time, Susan Leak, we said, hey, why don't you start a blog? And I was like, what's that? And so I kind of went and, Google it and figure everything out, and set up what was initially CaribbeanTechNews.com. Then it moved to SiliconCaribe.com. And so the blog became a repository of all the stories that came into us, that we wrote about in terms of what we found out there. And so the blog then led us to say, hey, let's meet up. And so that led to us starting our first tech event called Kingston Beta, which is just about getting a bunch of entrepreneurs in and have them talk about what it is that they're doing or what it is that they want help with. And so it kind of took me down a road because it went on, Kingston Beta went on for 11 years. We did Carbon Beta. We did pretty much over 11 years. When we stopped Kingston Beta, we had already done over 300 events across 10 Caribbean countries, plus the diaspora, worked with governments, worked with investors, worked with development agencies, helped to form little micro communities across different countries as well. And so the blog led to an event, which led to a movement, which led to 2 burnouts and me pausing and then me coming back and say, all right, cool. What happens now? In fact, in another 3 days, on February 28th, SiliconCaribe and all that we've done turns 15. And so we're on this new path evolved path where we say, okay, we're going to continue to build a media business, which definitely, the blog, the podcasts, newsletters. We're going to launch a membership club soon that will have its perks. And of course, we're going to continue to do events, but more like annual events or events with partners like we've done with Microsoft and Dell and Amazon Web Services. So that's been somewhat of the journey. And that was completely, I would say, by accident, because that's not exactly what I had planned.
Well, I think anyone starting out in journalism and being an investigative reporter is like such an amazing foundation to do anything. And then combine that with tech, you can your communication skills, just get, drastically like tested. And, what you probably did in a day when you were an investigative reporter and then also using tech is probably like more than what most people, from a communication standpoint, the information in and out of your brain and right is probably more than most people do in like a month, So I feel like, especially, coming from a PR background, I was always very intrigued with journalism, and I felt like the best publicists were former journalists, and the best content creators are former, journalists who probably, it's like that 10,000 Malcolm rule where you write so much a day that you become, so proficient in writing, right? That then you apply that to a different, different profession, let's say, and your skill set now becomes something different. So I love that background story on you. And so we didn't get to the part about crypto. So now tell us, where you are with crypto and where any advice you can give us.
Well, here's the thing. Because I was at the time helping to build out what in essence was a tech startup ecosystem, there are a lot of people who are in our community, our Kingston Beta community, or SiliconCaribe community. And so there are a lot of developers who, very smart, very, into things. They're very nerdy and geeky as well. I heard about Bitcoin when it was $25. And I said, that's a scam. Give me a break. That was in Jamaica by a Jamaican developer who was being paid in Bitcoin from some work he was doing from an American project. Second time I heard about Bitcoin was in the US Virgin Islands. I went there to keynote at the university. And this guy says, hey, Ingrid, I want to talk to you afterwards. And we met on the beach to have a drink. And he was telling me, you got to, look into this thing called Bitcoin. At the time, it was $100. And I was like, no, it is no. And at the time too, I did not have the capacity to go and do what I usually do, which is to go spend late nights on a weekend and to go deep dive. So that kind of missed me, because that's just like octopus woman doing different things. And then here's the irony of it now. When it's all blown up and everything, I was like, how? And so again, my friends, the pandemic made me do it. I can basically say that. When I had all this time, because things had just kind of stopped for my business, and my cousin, who is neck deep into it, also a developer, is a certified blockchain architect, the whole 9 yards. He says, Ingrid, use this time to go and know some more, because there's like a whole thing now. And I did. I went all in. And so now I understand, Bitcoin, I understand, Ethereum, I understand DeFi. When I say understand, I mean like 30,000 foot level understanding. Understand DeFi, understand crypto gaming. So what I've chosen to do and I understand like the crypto mining aspect of things, because what I found is like a bunch of Caribbean people who are crypto millionaires and could have been in the game for like 3 to 5 years and made some decisions. So I get a lot of advice from them. So what I have done, because you can't boil the ocean, you're gonna have to choose what genuinely interests you. And so, and what has a lot of potential to grow. So without question, you do the investing in the usual, you go on the crypto exchanges and you buy some Bitcoin, you buy some ETH, and you look at some other things like Solana and Axie Infinity and everything. So I've chosen to focus on crypto gaming because I understand the gaming ecosystem and the potential of all that, especially the play to earn aspect of things. I like Solana and those guys, which are like competition to like Ethereum. Of course, I love Ethereum because I believe that it is highly likely to go the trajectory of Bitcoin. And of course, Bitcoin is the mother, right? So you just basically, as much as you can each month, buy and hold and just hold. No matter how things are screaming at you like it has been over the past couple of weeks, when it dips, if you can, buy some more and hold, right? So I've just kind of created my own investment strategy as I learn more about where to invest. I mean, I'm thinking about doing some crypto, in terms of the crypto infrastructure, the mining aspect of things, maybe, getting some nodes and investing in some nodes and helping, with different aspects of the infrastructure things. But again, I'm still learning, but I have gone all in because I now understand that this is a fundamental shift in the future of money and how we interact with it all and what we use it to do and with whom.
So how long ago what would you say, how long have you been in the crypto game, and what was your ramp up time, and what advice can you give if somebody they haven't even started? Where do you even begin?
I would say I'm only like 2.5 years in terms of the deeply into it. I knew about
That's a long time.
But it's just 2.5 years. And I consider myself still I thought I was late, but I'm realizing I'm still early with a couple of things, but and there's still a lot of room to grow. But where to begin? I think start with trying to find a community that have people who generally understand crypto, and when people are able to send you the copy of Satoshi Nakamoto's 9-page document in terms of the whole premise of Bitcoin and why it was created, and how they perceive this actually enabling or democratizing money and democratizing ownership of digital assets. For me, getting to meet those nerds who understand that premise and who are into it and who already have some skin in the game in terms of investing or developing. When you get around those people, just be curious, because they tend to be exceedingly generous once you ask certain questions, and they will give you, follow this person, or listen to this podcast, go to this particular blog, and that's what I did. So I follow Coin Bureau on YouTube. I listened to this guy called Pompolino. He's one of those very macho American men who believe that everything that comes out of his mouth is gospel. But it's always good to always listen to people who you don't necessarily agree with, but they can give you some information. And of course, I listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, very smart businessman. There is a young lady, I think a Silicon Valley girl. Again, she's very great at taking what may seem to be large, unwieldy, concepts, and synthesizes it and make you able to actually personalize what this particular thing means. And I just read and I listen to this podcast called the All In Podcast with Jason Calacanis, Chamath Palihapitiya, and David Sachs and another guy. So I listen to I read a ton. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a ton of reports and blogs, and just kind of ingest it all, and then talk to the people who I know who are doing very good things and are very, very successful in certain areas. And I book some time with them and I talk to them. And then I will sit with myself and feel what is right for me in my own gut, my own risk appetite. And then I spend my money and my time accordingly. So that's what I pretty much do.
What recommendations would you give? I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for women to enter this space. This is, you read me the quote, I don't know if you can summarize it, about, if women don't step in, what a disadvantage we're going to be in 10 years. I think the stat right now is just in general, women have maybe, it's like 70-30 in high tech, 60-40, but more like 70-30 male dominated. And I mean, I have, kind of like my background is not exactly, but similar, where I got into tech super early because I had a PR agency that we all of a sudden started getting all these .com clients that were getting like heavily invested and just throwing money at PR agencies. And it made us take like a really quick, fast, deep dive into figuring out tech and Google and how to get publicity really quick. But it was, we had to figure out how to go from 12-month PR campaign planning to 1 week, 2-week PR plan, campaign
Absolutely.
planning.
Yeah.
But it was like extremely male dominated. And it was just kind of like, that's just how it was. Like, I didn't really like take any real notice one way or another. That was just kind of like how my business life was. But then fast forward to, the Me Too movement, I kind of took a step back and I was like, wait a second, like, why? Like, it really does kind of bother me that there's, not a lot of female speakers. And I was one of them, but I was like one of them, 5% makeup of it. And, and why aren't women getting more than spotlight when it comes to media coverage? And why aren't we getting equal pay for the same position? And why aren't there more women on boards? And yes, we are improving, but that statistic, if you want to share it or summarize it, that we talked about, really was like, whoa, like women need to really step up.
Yeah, I should have actually pulled it up because I tweeted it out actually when that day that we spoke. But in essence, it basically says that like tech, crypto is outrageously male dominated. If you notice that when I was giving you references in terms of who I was speaking to or who I was watching or listening to, 9 out of 10 of them were men, right? And thankfully, and that's been the case in terms of my own, journey in tech. I was a woman who created a community, et cetera, and I was doing different things. So, and I had my own challenges along that process. And I learned how to, jump over those hoops or blast them away from in front of me. In crypto, again, we have to acknowledge the fact that crypto is fundamentally changing the future of money and the future of ownership. And without question, I guess the men got there first because maybe it was were the dudes who were creating different things or developing, and it was just basically like a carryover from the tech bro culture and that kind of a thing. But yes, women, I think, I don't want to say we've been socialized to be risk averse, because the women that I hang out with are definitely not that's definitely not the case. I mean, I guess when you're an entrepreneur, you tend to have a different modus operandi around that. But women, without question, have got to just do their own, just follow their curiosity. They hear about, Ethereum, they hear about Bitcoin, they hear about Solana, they hear about, Cardano, whatever it is. Make Google your friend and go on YouTube. And you have got to simply, every time you attend an online event that is talking about crypto, they will always say, the one, is not financial advice, and 2, do your own homework. And that really is what you have to do. You have to do your own homework and try and understand. And I would suggest that you go Google Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, 9 pages. It's not an easy read, but take it in doses, and please go ahead and so you can understand the premise of what is, happening, all these things that are flowing forward. And so you've got to understand that's the premise that we're working with. So
I believe this is it. You see my screen? This is
Yes.
the white paper. Yeah. So I'll put
Yeah.
this in the chat for
Yeah.
everybody, and we'll also make sure that we send out a link with it. It is, doesn't look like that easy of a read, but just
It's
breeze
not.
through it, because I mean, definitely, it's where everything started.
Exactly. It's where everything started. And, and again, if you don't understand everything, try and find primarily the crypto groups tend to be either on WhatsApp or Telegram and also Discord. Well, Discord is tend to be heavy NFT people, but WhatsApp group and Discord. In the Caribbean, we have the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance. We have the Caribbean NFT groups. We have the Women in Blockchain groups. We have the Crypto Chicks group, and they're all on WhatsApp. And also some of them are most of the crypto conversations are happening on Telegram. And so I just encourage you to go on Telegram, download Telegram, and go and do some searching and find some information there, and go and have a look. And now, because women around the world, especially in Europe and the United States and in the Caribbean, are now realizing that women really, we have to push them and encourage them and excite them about this space. There are a lot of micro groups that are there now, and so you now can go ahead and just use Google and just go and join the party and listen a lot and see what they're saying, because they're very generous in terms of what they share and how they share. But it's onus is still going to be on you. You're going to have to do a lot of reading, watching, listening, and then you can just say, you know what, I'm always been interested in gaming. Let me see what is happening with crypto gaming. What is this play to earn thing? Why is, people talk about the metaverse, and why did JP Morgan open up a bank in Decentraland? What's that about? Join Decentraland. Why is, I don't know which brand that was decided going to put some information, set up some things on Sandbox. What is Sandbox? Go join Sandbox and go have a look and roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. There's really no way around it. And if you're interested in, remittances, if you're part of, you have family outside of where you live, and you spend a lot of money and time sending remittances, crypto remittances are growing really fast because, of course, they're faster, less fees, and again, minus all the foolishness that comes with the traditional stuff. So just look in your own life. If you like gaming, follow that. If you're into remittances or getting more money for your, right now the inflation is taking us crazy, is driving us nuts, and everything is increasing. And of course, the amount of money that a bank gives you on the money that it just stays in your bank account is really nothing. So DeFi, decentralized finance, may be of massive interest to you. Google about that and see what's about. Who are the top startups or companies that are in that space. Look and see where venture capital firms are putting their money into that. Andreessen Horowitz, even though I don't agree with like 80% of what they do and their tech bro culture, they're also very smart in terms of betting on certain companies in particular spaces. So they're heavily into crypto. And because they see certain things coming, and they're also trying to make certain things happen as well. So there's just a vast number of ways in which you can get your hands dirty and get learning, because women have an opportunity here to put a stake in their ground, learn really fast, collaborate with both men and women, try different things, experiment. If you have some money to spare that you want to see what you want to invest in, $500 or $1,000 or something like that, go test it out, go read and say, all right, maybe I'll throw some in at ETH, or maybe I'll throw some in at Decentraland. But you have to understand why you're doing that. So there are just so many different ways to enter, but it's a fantastic time and a fantastic opportunity for women to not just take a stake, but take a nice big bite of this ever expanding pie.
I totally agree. And, I really am not, I haven't had that much experience in crypto, but if you're buying NFTs, you kind of have to, at least you figure it out as you go, because that's the only way you could really make any purchases or create anything.
Yeah.
And I, had to be like a super fast learner, and I didn't even realize like the whole concept. So I was trying to buy an NFT, and it was, 2 ETH, and, one day 2 ETH is $5,000, and the next day 2 ETH is $3,000. I'm like, wait a second, I'll just pay you in dollars. No, that doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
Okay, so you need to figure that out. And it ended up, like I said, I had to learn really fast, but it took me a good week or 10 days. And Dana's on here. She was with me when I was crossing my fingers, waiting to get my NFT that one of my friends helped me buy, because I couldn't get enough ETH in my wallet to make the purchase. Otherwise, I thought somebody else was going to get it and do the buy now. So anyway, but what was so stressful is that, my friend bought it for 2 ETH, and I owed her 2 ETH, and 2 ETH from the time she bought it to when I gave her the 2 ETH was a lot more expensive. So I had to learn very quickly, like now I follow ETH every day. I'm like, oh my God, ETH is down,
Absolutely.
ETH is up. And you kind of, I get notifications. I'm like, oh my God, we need to buy ETH. But
exactly.
I feel like, even if, like, let's say somebody listening, somehow find a way to reduce your expenses by $100 a month and put that $100 into a couple different, buy a little ETH, buy a little Bitcoin, buy a little, whatever. And if you have savings that you're doing automatically every month, maybe take half of your savings in, until you feel comfortable doing more, but take half that savings and just, maybe that's another 100 or 200 a month.
Yeah.
And just, start really small. And I'm going to take my own advice that I'm saying right now, but the reason I can say that is because this experience I just went through with buying my NFT, and I, got my husband to go to a conference with me a couple of weeks ago. And, I ended up, before I went to the conference and before I had to pay my friend, like I bought the domain lisabuyer.eth.
Yes.
And I had my husband get his domain, I got him that for his birthday, donhempel.eth. I'm like, it's just in 2 years, this is going to be so common, right? It's going to be like, somebody had, should we get a website? Should you get your domain, your company name? Should you get your .eth name? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of, that's why for me and for my friends and colleagues who've been in the internet space since the late 90s, we know we've been here before. I mean, the American startup that I was at, we were going to go IPO, but then the market, you know what I mean? Or I would have been rich mujer back then, right? Yeah. So it's almost like a repeat of that, where this is a new frontier. It's a massive trend that is just going to get more and more prevalent as the years go by. And so we just have to say, all right, cool. No, I was not smart then to invest in like Apple and Amazon and those guys. So now I can start, cool, I'm going to invest in these and that and just kind of ride the wave and see how much I can learn. But I want to, there's this other, for another resource, there's this email newsletter called Milk Road. And it's, again, started by this guy called Shan Puri. He, again, successful tech entrepreneur and investor. He co-hosts this podcast called My First Million with the guy who's a CEO of the hustle.co, Sam Parr. And he puts out this daily email newsletter explaining crypto and Web3 and those concepts. And that is it. And so in very plain English, he explains things to you. And I think it's just a fantastic resource just to whet your appetite. But in the one that I read today, I pulled out a quote. It says, "Crypto is an exit, a life raft, a parachute to jump out of the traditional financial system. Bitcoin to store your wealth, Ethereum to pay for your computing, DeFi, decentralized finance, for lending and borrowing, NFTs for art and memberships, and DAOs for collaboration. I thought it was a very interesting and very succinct,
I love that.
Succinct way of helping you to understand basically what each of these sectors are about. And that's, it's an exciting time. I mean, these things just kind of keep me up at night. So, and I just read a lot, which is why I wear these babies. What's my geek glasses. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I love that quote. And I just put the link in here for everybody. And then Dana mentioned that Overpriced JPEGs is a podcast with Carly Riley, DeFi Download with Sarah Ammon on Substack. So we'll definitely have to check those out.
Yeah, there's just a ton of things. And of course, you're going to have with every new frontier, you're going to have the people who are scamming, the people who are shilling and only trying to, basically pump things up because it's going to benefit them. So like with anything else, you have to be mindful and discerning and trust your own instincts in terms of what looks like a pump, or, what looks, like somebody's actually trying to really explain things to you for it to understand in a way that you can make your own decision. So there are a lot of resources out there. And I just say, women, please, let's do this. Let's put a stake in the ground. Let's get as much of the pie as we can, but not just in terms of learning and understanding things like, jumping in on our crypto exchanges, but seeing how you can start your own stuff. You know what I mean? How maybe what you do now can translate into that world, and see, do you want to invest in startups that are doing interesting things? Do it. I'm definitely done that. Just started doing that. I'm also on the board of this company called Crypto Isle, which is based in the Bahamas, and it's led by 2 women, and that's where we had the physical aspect of our event, Future of Caribbean Money, and they've done very well in terms of investing in the coins and tokens and everything. Now they've set up an entire compound, a co-working space to train, to invest in startups, to create a whole ecosystem there. As well. So we have to think about different ways in which we can get involved in this growing industry.
I think one of the key words that you said was collaboration.
Yeah.
And Dana had a question here. She said, do you trust women as resources more than men in the crypto space? And my experience with that so far has been that, like the men that you named, it's not men really versus women. It's just making sure that whether it's a man or a woman, that it's a trusted source, like a Gary Vee or some of these podcasts that you, but the men that I've experienced in the space have been very welcoming, very collaborative, not competitive in a way where they're like shutting you out in any way. And it's not to say that, in the past, most of the men that I've dealt with in the tech industry weren't intentionally like that, but it was just kind of like the culture, and it was just, they didn't even notice what was going on most. I mean, then there's some that were definitely like, whatever, like we're not going to give them like any of our energy right now, but I feel like that it is getting better, and that it's not so much trusting men versus women, but I'm hoping that men will continue to make more of an effort, not even continue to make more of an effort.
Yeah.
So I think it's up to women to not just reach out to women, but to reach out to women and also reach out to men in a way that's like, hey, like, we're in this together, we're your equal.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I've had negative experiences with men and women in the tech industry. I've had, one youngster pretty much call me a dirty gal, which is pretty much, it's like 2 steps up from bitch, right? And I could have ruined him and his startup, but I said, no, I'll let karma remember his address later on. So I've had, I've had experiences with men. I've had experiences just recently with a woman who is known to be toxic in the Caribbean crypto space. Everybody knows her by name and everybody knows how she rolls, and she likes to pit people against each other. So I also know how to deal with that and to suck the energy from that and move it elsewhere. So for me, it's, and because if you've been reading, watching, listening, and just being in your own space as an entrepreneur, as a creative, you can pick up who is actually trying to sell you crap or who is trying to lead you astray, versus people who generally, if you ask questions or they pass on resources that they themselves are participating in. And so what I find, I just simply, there's some guys, because always the men who are always passing me stuff. And again, that's because of the position that I hold in the region. I'm a trusted leader in the region. I always say, hey, Ingrid, have you heard of this? Check this out, right? You can't miss on this, check this out. And they'll know that I'll follow up and ask questions and all that. And so I get that from men and I get that from women. So you just have to trust your own instincts as you go about educating yourself around this. But no, it's not a man versus woman. It's just that those are the resources that I found most useful at this time. And when I find women doing more, then I'll do that. I mean, just on my own, the podcast that we're about to launch this week in Caribbean Tech, my co-host, who's a dude, we created a 15-minute segment of our 1-hour podcast that is only going to be about the future of Caribbean money, all about crypto, all about DeFi, because we've got to put more spotlight on it. And I've made, it's part of the culture of our podcast now, where we're not just going to go take the first dude that comes to tell us stuff. We're going to actively, we must have, just like we do for our events, actually have equal men, equal women. And so I think the more of us who do that, like what you're doing with Female Disruptors, we'll get to know more people who are doing certain things in the space, so we can get to know about who they are, what they're saying, what they believe, and follow them, engage with them, collaborate with them, invest in them. So that's my approach to things.
I love that. And that is a perfect segue in our next session with Andrea Hoffman. For those listening, please tune into that. It was an amazing interview and it is pre-recorded, so keep that in mind. But one of the things that really, was a little bit of an aha moment for me, I just never thought of diversity in this way, but how diversity really triggers innovation.
Absolutely.
And, if you have, and if you're not just trying to check that box for, oh, these are the qualifications and we need diversity. And if you just, maybe you're not going to check all the boxes and but you're checking the box of diversity, the 50-50 thing is going to bring this innovation that you couldn't create, cultivate without having that 50-50. And that's what, she's got all of these amazing examples with big brands. And then she takes it down to actionable items for women to do and for small businesses to do. And I think that innovation part is just, it really, triggered me to be like, makes so much sense. And she gave some amazing examples. And I think, the other thing is that you kind of touched on this, but you don't have to just do crypto 24/7 and have that be your profession. You can apply, like Gina is on here right now. She's applying fashion and technology together. And, how does that make sense for her audience? But your audience also doesn't have to, be wearing a VR headset and be in the gaming industry, like to have it make sense.
Exactly. There is, I would recommend that all women listening here and all women who watched it would read this this article. It actually changed my perspective on a bunch of different things. It's called The Silent Rise of the Female Economy. It's written by an African-American woman, literally African American woman, called Danielle Kayembe. And she gives pardon?
Putting in what is the name of it? Silent Rise of?
The Silent Rise of the Female Economy. I think if I'm getting that right. Let me just make sure. By Danielle Kayembe.
Okay.
And it's something that when I was closing off my event series Kingston Beta, I was definitely to women, because women tend to have been more in the audience than pitching, and I've made every effort to get them to pitch. But the rise of the silent rise of the female economy speaks about women's buying power globally, women's control of assets and decision making globally. Yet still, not many are being funded. Not many products and services are even geared towards their own needs and their own ambitions. And it was almost like here's the scenario, but it also is a massive opportunity that women like us should actually look at and say, are we even creating products and services that are geared towards the needs and dreams of women? And if we are not, then there's a massive opportunity in front of you. No, please go ahead and do that. So it was a great resource and a rallying cry, kind of an article that was done by her years ago. And so I encourage all women to go have a read of that and connect with Danielle Kayembe. It was a brilliantly done article.
I'm definitely going to look that up. I put it in the chat. So we're about at time. If anybody has, Dana has a question that we'll look at right now, but if anybody has any questions for Ingrid, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We're almost at time. So Dana says, if you had $1,000, now this isn't financial advice, right, Ingrid? If you had $1,000 to invest, where would you put it? Bitcoin, ETH, split it 50-50?
Right now, I would do, to be really honest, I would do Polygon, which is Matic. I would do Polygon, I would do Solana, I would do ETH, and I would do Bitcoin. That's what I would do. Not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Right? Please do your work. So yeah.
Yeah, I heard they were talking a lot about Solano. Is that how you say it, Solano? At the NFT conference, that is, something that is, rising under the radar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Ingrid, any last words of wisdom? This has been fascinating, and thank you so much for being a guest. But is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to share? Any last words of crypto wisdom or tech wisdom or female disruptor wisdom? Female disruptor wisdom.
I remember doing a keynote last year with this Trinidadian Global School of Business, and they asked me to speak about how to become successful by being yourself. And it took me back a little bit, but I created almost like a 6 or 7 step process, and delivered what to be my most vulnerable keynote to date. And that is something that every time I engage with women in difference, I always say that whatever it is that you're choosing to do, whichever industry you're choosing to do it in, make sure that you bring all of yourself in every room, all of the time, because that's the only way that women and all kinds of women, all shades of women, or all ages of women, or backgrounds of women are going to, other women need to see you doing that. And that will give them permission and inspiration to do that. So I find that some women who are in certain spaces, they become very compartmentalized. They don't bring all of themselves to it. That's why I love people like Bozoma St. John. I love people like Ava DuVernay, who bring all of themselves in every room, all of the time, because that's the only way you're going to be truly successful and also truly be a disruptor. Those are my last 2 things.
I agree. And I feel like women also compartmentalize is a good word, but also sometimes we feel like we have to be so rehearsed or choreographed that we're reading from a script versus just being ourselves.
Absolutely. And I was like that in the beginning. And then I was like, ooh, why am I doing that? And so the more real, the more I really became Ingrid in all her wonderfulness and warts is the better things got for me.
Okay, well, Ingrid, thank you for being a female disruptor. Thank you for joining us on this panel.
Thank
And
you.
we will put all of these very valuable links. We'll keep everyone posted of your events and let us know about your podcast, and we'll make sure to
Yes.
share it across our social.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. And again, you can always reach me online somewhere, Twitter and LinkedIn. Happy to collaborate. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Dana, for the connection.
Thank
so
you,
much.
and
Take care.
cheers. Bye.
Yes, take care.
Happy hour. Bye.
Bye-bye.